Welcome to our second session of our Train Your Dog Month webinar series. This week, we're going to cover offered attention. It may be something that you're familiar with. Perhaps you've taught your dog name attention. I'm going to go through how to teach it, why it matters, and troubleshoot a few tips to make sure you can be successful with your dog on this. So a little bit about me. I am the founder and president of Dogma Training in Calgary, Alberta. We've got 2 dog training facilities. We do day school, group classes, private training, and we also have Dogma Academy where we teach others to become dog trainers. I'm quite active in volunteer and board work. I recently sat on the board for the Association of Professional Dog Trainers and was the first Canadian chair of that board in 2018. I'm currently the vice chair of the Canadian Association of Professional Dog Trainers. I sit on the board for Community Therapy Dog Society, a local group out of Alberta. And then I also am on the City of Calgary board for Licensing and Community Standards Appeal Board. So lots of volunteer work. My life has literally gone to the dogs, and I'm really excited to take part in Train Your Dog Month. This is an initiative started by the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. The real focus is on helping people understand that dog training can be simple and then it should be fun. This ties in really well to the Dogma difference and what my focus is for Dogma and what we want to do for dogs and their families. The ultimate goal is we want to help dogs be successful in their families and our busy human world. We do that through making sure that training is easy and accessible. We offer training to hit every budget and schedule, and we really are excited to get down to some of these core concepts and introduce them and share them throughout the month. So what exactly is offered attention? Ultimately, it's exactly how it sounds. Your dog offers you attention. The dog makes the choice to look at you. What we're going to do with this skill, though, is that we're going to reward our dogs every time that they do this. In turn, that means they're going to offer us more attention, and we're going to see a dog that just offers us attention much more regularly. It's really ultimately a form of capturing. So if you didn't have a chance to watch the webinar last week on capturing behavior, I recommend you do that first, but I am going to cover it a bit. So what is capturing? Ultimately, it's rewarding what you want to see more of. We get really caught up in this idea that we have to be telling our dogs what to do all the time. One of the things that we fail our dogs the most with is we don't reward them when they offer good behavior. We tend to actually ignore it. I'll give you an example. You're out with your dog. They're walking along nicely beside you. You're really enjoying the walk together. You completely ignore them. And then let's say your dog pulls off to go and sniff something, and then we get upset about it. It may be that you have a puppy and they're at home and they're being really well behaved and they're chewing on their toy, and you're just so happy watching them and you just think they're super cute, but you ignore them. And then after a while, puppy gets a little bored of the toy, so gets up and goes and tries to chew on a pillow or something. And then we come to life. We can inadvertently reward our dogs for behavior we don't want to see more of. And it's really about switching the mindset. So offered attention is a huge part of that, because it's amazing how often our dogs look to us. They give us great attention. They're nice and focused, and we completely ignore it. So we're going to shift that a bit. And for the next little while, we're going to really focus on that attention. If you have a dog that you struggle with excitability, lack of focus, they're easily distracted, I wouldn't worry about anything else. And I would just worry about this offered attention. This one is really going to help you and all the things you're going to do with your dogs. So I'm going to show you a quick video on how to teach offered attention.
Always have food rewards on you. Whenever your dog looks at you, say yes and reward. Yes. Tips for success. Practice this skill at all times. Out on walks, in the training classroom, at home, in the yard, and all places you are out with your dog. In the beginning, focus on this at all times and even feed your dog's meal to them while watching for offered attention. Do not be cheap. The time spent in the beginning is the foundation for all training with your dog. Keep it fun and reward all offered attention, especially outside.
So it really is that simple. And this happy little face is what you want to see a lot from your dogs. They just learn to looking to you means good things. They learn through association. So this is really powerful. If they start figuring out that they look to you and good things happen, they're just going to do it more. And so continue to watch for this. And I'm going to go through more steps onto how to really build it so you get that reliable, long-lasting offered attention. So why teach it? Ultimately, it's about building attention. So many of us struggle with our dogs. It's normal, it's expected. They get out and the world is exciting. It's overstimulating. There's so much going on, and a lot of it our dogs don't understand. So if you've got a puppy or a young dog, they're taking in the world and they're learning about it. A lot of it is very exciting. So if you think about a child too, when they're first exploring and seeing the world, everything is interesting. They can get lost in it. As we age, this stuff just becomes more familiar. So it's irrelevant, and we ignore a lot of it when we're out on our walks. Not the case with our dogs. And they tend to get really excited. And, you think about things, their nose to the ground, they get really into a smell, they're pulling at the end of the leash, they get excited by everything. And so by working on offered attention, you can help counter that so much. It's a really powerful skill that way. It's ultimately the foundation of all of your training. If you've got a dog that's checking in with you and looking at you, you're going to have much more success in your training. You think about a skill like recall, they've got to stop, turn, look to you, and come back. If you have a dog that's frequently checking in and looking with you, they're not going far, they're not going to go out of sight. It's going to be much easier to call them back to you as well. It helps with loose leash walking. It helps with just overall skills. If you're out and your dog is at the end of the leash and they don't care about you, it's going to be really difficult to then ask them to sit or do something that you may need them to do in certain situations. It creates focus. So whether I'm, working with a puppy, a young dog, a new dog, that may be an adult dog, perhaps a dog that's struggling with fear or reactivity, this can really help them. And it really goes to that foundation of all training. But what it ultimately does is it creates focus. Often, if I'm working with a fearful or reactive dog, we work just on the skill for the first couple of weeks. We don't worry about anything else. If the dog doesn't care about us, we're not going to have success with anything else. But by the dog starting to understand that looking to you means good things, it helps to build that focus. The other thing too, when they're scanning and they're maybe getting excited or perhaps fearful of the world around them, they're not in their thinking brain. And ultimately, that's when they've got good focus and they're slowing down, and you're not getting the same level of excitability, arousal, reactivity. When I start teaching my dog to look to me, when they look and they actually have to look and focus on me, we're getting them into the thinking brain more. So it really helps to build that focus. Ultimately, it helps to prevent and resolve behavior concerns. As I mentioned, we work with this a lot. If I'm working with a fearful or reactive dog, if they don't have attention, I'm not going to be able to do anything else with them. So I need to really work on that. And ultimately, if I'm teaching them to look to me, they can't be out reacting or doing all of this other stuff. So it's incompatible with many of those behaviors that we don't want to see on leash. It helps to prevent overexcitability, arousal, lack of focus, a distracted dog, all of these things. So it's a really powerful and useful skill to have. So how does it work? Really, it's simple with dogs. Behavior that is rewarded repeats. I mentioned a bit about our mindset. We tend to focus when our dogs are misbehaving. It's so powerful when we focus on them when they're doing good things. If you haven't watched that Capturing Behavior webinar, this goes into this in much more detail and how dogs just learn through association. But when we're focusing, every time they look to us, we treat it, we're going to start to see that repeat and happen more often. It's powerful because the dog is learning ultimately that their own behavior is causing the food reward to happen. It's great for training. It's great for getting them thinking, problem solving, really getting them to use that brain more. But ultimately, I love anything that the dog's figuring out how their behavior makes the good stuff happen. It makes it really long lasting and reliable that way, and lots of fun for the dog. And ultimately, you want to build up that reliability. So as you're first teaching it and your dog is understanding that when they do this, good things happen, we then want to build that reliability so it starts happening everywhere. we forget about this with our dogs. And so we teach them a skill and we just expect it to happen everywhere, and they just don't work that way. So we've got to help them become more reliable with this skill. How do we do that? We want to ensure that we're using high value rewards. So when I talk about high value rewards, members, we released a Train Your Dog Month webinar in the membership. There's a category for this, and under there, there's ones on rewards and motivation. It's a great webinar that goes through all the details on how to ensure you're using those rewards through the best way to ensure that your dog is really highly motivated. Simply put, though, really what it comes down to is having some traits that your dogs love. One of the ways I love to test this is I put a treat to the dog's nose and I'll see if they'll follow it like a little magnet. Now, this is going to work with most treats inside your house. So make sure that you also practice this outside when it's a bit busier and perhaps when your dog is a little distracted. You'll find sometimes treats that work really well inside don't matter outside because there's other stuff that are more interesting and higher value to your dog. There's nothing wrong with the food reward. It's just not high value enough. It's the difference between $5 or $500 for us. So when I'm out there, I want to make sure I've got a few different ones that if my dog's a little distracted, I can put it in front of their nose, move them away, use it like a magnet. I know that it's a goldmine one. I'll use that when I'm out teaching this to really power it up and make it worthwhile for the dog. You want to start in those quiet places. So start it inside. You don't have to do inside for long, but you can practice when things are busier. Perhaps kids are running around, maybe the cat's doing something, the doorbell, all of these things. So if there's stuff going on that may be more distracting to your dog, it's a really great idea to still reward that offered attention. Take it to the front yard, the backyard, watch for it on walks when you're out, take it more and more out into the world. And understand that the busier it is, or the more things are going on, like a squirrel up in a tree, perhaps another dog, a group of kids playing, all of these things may be too distracting for your dog. So start quiet and build from there. You want to reward frequently too. Don't be cheap. You know, we're so bad at being cheap. One of the things I think about is, let's say I'm out with my dog and I've got treats that are about that big. So some of the treats I like to use are just freeze-dried liver. And, you know, they're about that big, maybe some of the chunks. But what I could do is I could take that and maybe break it into 10 treats. So let's say I go out and I have 100 good responses from my dog that I reward. And maybe one of those treats gives me about 10. You know, maybe at a max, they're getting 10 of those. But in turn, I've got 100 good, solid offered attention opportunities rewarded. That is laying such a solid foundation. I don't want to be cheap. I want to reward frequently so that the dog understands that's what I'm looking for. And then I'm really making it a high value skill. You don't have to do it forever, but in the beginning, don't be cheap. Make sure you're rewarding it. And as I mentioned in the video, use their kibble, use some of their food in their food bowl, different things that you can reward them with. And wait it out. So if you are out somewhere and perhaps it's not too quiet and something comes and your dog is a little excited, don't worry about it. Just wait for them to look to you. We can't teach offered attention by asking them to look at us or saying stuff and interrupting them. That is the cue. So it's not actually offered attention. So you want to wait them out. They will eventually look to you. Say you go on a walk right now and you only get one look, or perhaps they do kind of that half look. You want a yes and treat. We covered the yes and the reward marker in the capturing behavior video or webinar rather. So you'll want to watch that and we'll go through some of that foundation stuff if your dog doesn't understand it. But wait it out a bit, give them the opportunity to make the choice to look at you. So what about troubleshooting? What if things aren't going so well? There's a few tips to make sure that you can have success with this. Have a variety of treats. Keep it interesting. Some dogs aren't too food motivated initially. If I have a dog that's not really food motivated, that means I've really got to work on this offered attention. That means they find the world that distressing, perhaps. They could be a little bit fearful. It's maybe they're just far too distracted. They've got a complete lack of focus, so they don't care about food. So it's a sign that I've really got to do this and build it up. Practicing offered attention will help with that. They might just be too distracted, you know? So having that variety of treats, understanding that there's just too much going on for them. If they are too distracted, wait them out for a while, or perhaps just take them to a quieter spot where they can have more success and you can build off that. The other thing is if you're infrequent with practicing this. So if you go out on your walk and you only get 2 offered attentions and that's all you do, your dog's not going to start offering it to you more. They're not going to be able to associate what they've done yet. They need to have this repeat often so that light bulb can go off and go, okay, it's when I look to mom or dad, I get a treat, good things happen. So just be aware of that when you're out with them. And when you're practicing with them, do it all the time. I would watch for it all the time in the house. Every time I'm out, I'm engaged with them. I'm actively watching them. I'm aware of when they look at me so I can reward almost every single one of them that they do. That's going to lay that really solid foundation. If you don't do that, they might not connect it, or it's going to take a really long time and it'll cause some unnecessary frustration for both of you. Minimize what you say. So what I mean by this is where I was talking about we've kind of been led to believe that we should always be telling our dogs what to do. But this really shifts this. One of the things I do too is try to minimize, particularly if I'm working with a puppy or a young dog that's just learning, I want to minimize how much I talk to them so that my words have more value. If my dog's not engaged with me, I don't engage with them too. I wait them out. And then when they do look at me, I can go, oh, yes, treat, treat, treat. That's so good. Your brain's back on. You're back with me. So good. And I can become very engaged. And that in itself is rewarding. And it's also what you can do long term. So you don't always need to do those food rewards. But like I said, you're not going to be cheap. You're going to reward frequently. You're going to have that variety of treats. You're going to set them up for success in those quiet places. And you're going to minimize what you say to them. You're going to try to do it so every time they look and engage with you, you engage back. Hugely powerful and such a simple skill. So I'm going to show you this in action. So this is Shelly with Gus. We're going out and she is just doing watching for offered attention. So in here, we're doing something a little bit different with the auto watch. So Gus knows his attention well. So he's looking to something and then coming back, but it's ultimately just offered attention. So Shelly's not doing anything and he looks to her and gets treated for it. So we'll watch it in action out in the real world. He checks in, yes, and treat. We can see there's a dog, so something more exciting. Yes, and treat. Yes, and treat. So every time Gus looks at Shelly, and she's getting a lot of great attention from him. So this is a little bit more exciting. She yes and treat. She's just waiting him out too. So I don't have the volume on, but she's not talking to him until he looks at her. She doesn't treat there because she's working particularly with this dog. But if you were working just with offered attention and your dog is just there, you're going to treat every time they check in with you there. So she's waiting, looks at the dog, looks, gets a little excited, but comes back, and then she gives him multiple treats, reward frequently, because that was a really good one. And what I love about this video, Gus is really nice and happy. They're engaged. And even when you see them practicing that loose leash walking, when they're coming up here at the beginning, they're walking so nicely together. So I'm just going to step it back a bit. If you watch here, and this is what I was chatting about with it being the foundation of all that you're doing. If you're getting really good offered attention, it's amazing how well this helps with loose leash walking, which I know is everyone's struggle. And so if you work just on that offered attention, watch how much it helps that loose leash walking. You can see they're really nice in sync and they're staying together, and Shelly's getting tons of attention from Gus. Now, this is not how you're going to walk your dog forever. You know, you're not going to need to be out with them and frequently treating every time they're looking at you. But in the beginning, you're going to do this, and then you slowly start to phase them out. And then you only need to really reward offered attention when exciting things happen. So let's say you're out with your dog and a deer jumps across a path. Your dog looks, comes back to you. You go, yes, and treat. So you'll build those really high value ones, and just ensure that you're working this all the time with them, ultimately acknowledging and engaging with them, but you're not going to have to reward it like this for life. But again, we're not going to be cheap, so we're not worried about that and doing tons of treating right now. So the ultimate benefits are of this. One thing I love is it's really clear communication. Like I said, we're stopping all that other talking and that noise. Dog just looks to us, yes, and treat. It's so clear and simple for them and for us. As a result, it really minimizes stress and frustration. It also helps because you're working on all of this other stuff in a really simple concept. So it's going to minimize a lot of stress and frustration you may have together because of excitability, lack of focus, and all of those other things. It really does enhance the bond with your dog as well. So you can see, you watch Shelly and Gus walk there, it just looks so nice, and you can tell they're really in sync and happy together. My dog Deja, this is one of my past dogs, taught me this skill. And she really taught me the power of it. And it's something we brought into everything right away because of how much it really changed our relationship. She drove me crazy. She was young, she was active, she was easily distracted, she was excited about the world. She did not care about me at all when we got outside. I would try all of these things, but ultimately it was all about me telling her what to do and her just ignoring. It caused a lot of frustration and stress for the both of us. I decided to step it back a bit and I just started learning about the concept of capturing. And this is something I thought I would try with her more. When I started working on it a little bit with offered attention, I might only get 1 or 2 from her out on walks, but I did it everywhere with her. And it just clicked. I can't help but feel this is me putting some human attributes, but I can't help but feel in her mind, she was training me and she loved that piece of it. But she caught on really quick that she looked to me and good things happen. And it just created that ability that she could just kind of do her thing. But if I was really rewarding frequently with it, practicing it consistently and using high value rewards, she started to offer attention more and more. She got phenomenal with this to the point that I could do agility classes and go out with her and have her off leash in those classes. And she would stay right with me, regularly check in. Her loose leash walking was phenomenal. She had great recall. All of that happened. And because of that shift, her and I just clicked and our relationship changed and it was wonderful. And so try it. If you've got frustration with your dogs because of excitement, all of these things like lack of focus or even some other concerns, really try to just get out, work on this and watch the magic happen. A simple one, but so powerful. Try it for a couple of weeks. Just go out, reward just for that attention. Don't worry about anything else. Let your dog just be a dog and focus on that. Stop talking to them so much. Ignore them when they're not engaged. Engage with them when they come back and reward for that attention. And you'll see how much this shifts things for both you and your dog. So as usual, if you have questions, email us at training@dogmatraining.com. Thank you.